Nice.
Okay, I have a question. Do it. Not necessarily a thing, but you've been involved with several projects and Funimation after another company dubbed it. Have you felt that's a bit a unique challenge? And we'll say you in particular, one that I completely was ecstatic when I found out.
Oh, initially.
Yes, that's what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
Did you feel it was like a bigger challenge than just trying to take from the Japanese to English, because you're took from Japanese to English again, with maybe an established dub audience?
Well,
And with a lot of people with negative attitudes about that particular dub, because I'm thinking, I know Funimation took over, they're reviewing One Piece, so for the three of you, that any of the roles.
well, I mean, with something like Initial D, I didn't know the anime in Japanese or when it was done in English. So when it came to me, it was like, great, here's a new show. So I didn't know anything about the show prior to doing it. No, I was just, and I don't, the only time I really have had that is with... Oh, okay, yeah. But the only time I've had any kind of uneasiness was with Full Metal, because I'm like, man, if I screw this up, there's like 10 guys outside waiting to slit my throat to get it.
So I mean, it's a case where you think that's going from a cartoon to a live action, but still, when you're stepping into something already existing, even if there is stuff, in the case of something another like, so I know Vic, you've been involved in watching particular songs and stuff on it.
Yeah.
Have you felt that's been a challenge, like taking over something and
Well, I'll tell you what's funny about One Piece is that for years around Funimation, it was kind of a running gag. I mean, it was kind of a joke. I mean, we always heard the tales about how badly One Piece was being butchered.
Because Funimation lost it. Oh, it was never ours, but it was kind of like the Japanese company was looking for someone to make it, so they gave an episode to a variety of different dubbing studios and said, how would you do it, how would you do it, how would you do it, what would it sound like? And they didn't choose ours, and ultimately, well, because they wanted to try and get it on television. And at the time, 4Kids was who you went to get it on TV, even though they had to do so many things to it. So everyone was really sad, and this was when I was very first at Funimation. I'd only been there less than a year when this happened, and when we heard the news that we weren't getting it, it was like Depression City for quite a few months. And then when the 4Kids version came out, you couldn't help but just laugh a lot, because you're like, wow, that's what they wanted? Well, we couldn't have given them that if we tried. You know? But it's wonderful to, oh, I took over from you. You were talking about
No, go ahead.
Because I directed One Piece as well as singing in it, as well as playing Vivi, and what you have to do in that situation is, good or bad, whatever came before, what matters is pleasing these people in the room. So while I also believe it's important to maintain the integrity of the original work, the Japanese work, as best as possible, it's important that in the end we make a good show. John Bergmeyer, like our head writer, says, make good TV. That's what he says when we're writing scripts. So that's seriously, because we're supposed to entertain you. So that's what matters, in my opinion. And I try, like, if I took over something that was amazing, then I would probably be really frightened, like, oh, what do I do? Because, like, Monica played this part before, and now I have to play it, and oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do if it were my friend or someone, and I was taking on their role. That would be tough.
That's a really interesting segue, because I was going to tell them something.
Okay.
We're sitting here at the table. This plays right into your question. ADV had the license for Sergeant Frog before Funimation did, and I was cast as Carol. And we recorded 15 episodes, and I loved that show. Oh my God, it was so funny. Kyle Jones was directing it. We were having so much fun. We were buying all these toys and putting them around the studio, and we're loving it. And then bye-bye ADV, and they lost the license, and Funimation picked it up, and they recast it. Went to the very beginning and started over, and they cast Todd as Kara. I must really love Todd Haberkorn.
You're the ex-husband. I'm the husband. This is the wife.
But you know what, we've never talked about this, and we've never talked, and the only reason I brought it up is because it was online. I mean, they had previews, ADV had put previews online and trailers and stuff, and so my voice was out there as Carol. I'd already started signing stuff as Carol, and I was so excited about Sergeant Frog. But let me just say for the record, Todd's doing an amazing job. He sounds great, and you know, that's the way Ball Mountains, you know, it just happens that way. You know, I mean, sometimes you lose things, sometimes you get things, and you know what, to be honest with you, if somebody was going to get it, I would want it to be somebody that I liked and respected, and Todd is certainly one of those people.
It's cool though that you mentioned Initial D, because I'd only seen bits of it before, but my mom loved that show, like the campy, old, goofy version. She just loved it. She thought it was great. She had a lot of fun. She watched it with some friends. And so I said, no way, we got that show? We had it for quite a long time. We were sitting on it, and it was just one of those, like, what are we going to do with it? When will we ever start? Are we just going to re-release it? Are we going to redub it? And like years later, we finally did redub it, and it was great that I got to be in it, even though my character is insane. But she's so freaking weird, Kyoko. Oh, the
she's
female
the one that's on my car.
Yeah, the one who's like,
She's on my car, like worshiping my car, and she doesn't realize I'm sitting in the car watching.
Yeah, so it was cool. It was cool to get to tell my mom that hey mom, guess what show I'm in? Well, I'm in Initial D, and she's like, what? She's really excited.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
She sold it.
Well, you know what? I have some really good friends a J-pop band in Japan called Move.
Oh, yeah.
And Move did all the music for Initial D. And so I was so excited to be working on Initial D because they did the music.
Just because they were
Nice. Yes. Yeah.
We were given the 5 minutes like 2 minutes ago, so we can probably do one more question and we've gone to elaborate.
There is another camera.
Well, yeah, and we've got autographs and
I got something else.
We do?
I thought no, we haven't done it for an hour.
7.
Okay, so guy in the back with the hand.
So this is kind of a heavy question for Vic. With Ed being portrayed as a very atheist character, being a believer in Jesus, did you find it hard to do that voice, to do that role?
It is a heavy question. You guys mind if I answer that? You get 34 seconds. You know what? The first part of the answer is that's what acting is all about. Acting is playing a character that you are not. So, you know, Edward Elric might have certain views on religion or faith or God. They are not my views, certainly. But if I'm playing Ed, I'm playing that role. What I liken it to is like, you know, if you go to church, any of you guys go to church in here, and you have a passion play at Easter, right? You're going to portray the last few days of Jesus' life and crucifixion, right? Somebody's got to play Judas in your play, right? Well,
Steve Buscemi.
Todd Haberkorn. But you know, you see my point. It's going to be somebody in your church. I mean, it's going to be one of the people, your dad maybe, or a deacon, or you know what I'm saying, or the assistant pastor. Well, they're not Judas. They're playing the role for the sake of the show, right? And so I liken it in the same way. And you know, what I love about Ed is he's a seeker. He's really interesting. You know, I think back in the original series, and you know, in the first episode, he's talking to Rose, and he's like, you know, you better put down those scriptures and pick up an alchemy book, because we're the closest things to gods there are. We're like, whoa. right? I mean, like, prepare for the lightning to come down. But then, just a handful of episodes later, what does he say after he almost thinks Barry the Chopper's going to kill him? He says, we're not gods, we're just tiny, insignificant humans who couldn't even save the world. He's all over the place. You know what? Ed is suffering from horrible loss and bitterness and anger. And he's directing it anywhere and everywhere. And I totally understand it. I dig it. And God understands that too. We all do that. We all have difficulties in our lives, and we have struggles, we have loss and tragedy, and we get angry at our friends for no reason, or we get angry at our parents, or shake our fist at the heavens. I mean, everybody does that with the loss of somebody that they love. So I actually love that part of Ed. And I think a lot of people relate to that element of his personality. But for me, my faith is strong, my faith is grounded, I know what I believe, and I'm able to play characters that don't necessarily believe what I believe, but that's just where the acting comes in.
Vic, I love you, but I have to cut you guys off.
All right. We love you guys. We'll see you at autographs, right?